Hello everyone, my name is E-Money, and I like cars, but there are three things about cars that I particularly like. Made in America, the mid-engine layout, and of course, pop-up headlights. Combine all of those three things, and you get the Pontiac Fiero.
Just let me fall to my
Alright everyone, so as you can see right next to me, I have finally bought a Pontiac Fiero. You guys who have followed me for a long time have known that I love these cars, and I have looked for a good one for a long time, and I finally found one that is just perfect for sale. So this is a 1987 Pontiac Fiero GT. Okay, this is pretty much the nicest one you can get, aside from maybe an 88 because they redid the front suspension, but they only made those for a little bit and they're impossible to find. This is the very next best thing, okay? This has the V6 engine over the 4-cylinder. It's got the GT body style with the wing, which looks way better, and it's got a 5-speed manual. So let's take a look at this. So as I said, this is the 87 GT Fiero, which I think is the best looking version of the Fiero you can get. As opposed to the earlier models, you get this sort of extended nose on here, making it a bit more aerodynamic. You get the silver along the bottom. These body panels here look really great. And of course you get the wing on the back alongside these really cool kind of flying buttresses down the side here. On the earlier models, it was just cut off at the roof, but you get this sort of extended look to it, and I just think it makes a huge difference. It looks so much better than some of the earlier models. Let's start up front, talk about some of the things we have. First off, our indicators in here, because of course we have pop-up headlights, which is what is it about pop-up headlights that is just like the coolest thing ever? I don't know, but I'm so glad that I have something with pop-up headlights. Like, that's a dream for me. Also really cool, there are two Pontiac badges on here. One of them is on our left headlight, only on the driver's headlight, which is sort of a Pontiac thing. A lot of their cars only have your Pontiac badge on the one headlight. If we move alongside this awesome car, you can see we have, of course, our 80s lines on here. Wouldn't be an 80s car without a plastic piece going all across it. But I think it looks really cool, especially because Pontiac integrated the door handle into it. I just think that's really neat. It's flush with the car, and that's how you get on inside. And so this color, this is a burgundy color with the silver sort of highlights on the side. Two-tone color I think is really neat and pretty common with the GT models for this year. I don't know all of the colors it came in, but this is probably my favorite. It's also the most common. It's the only one that I've seen really up for sale. But I think you could also get a blue, sort of a tannish yellowish, a white, and a black. But I really like this red. I think it looks really good with the car. So matching sort of our silver highlights, we also have the silver wheels. These are 15-inch wheels, which sound really small by today's standards, but this is a really small car. I mean, just look at the roof line, like it's pretty low, and so you get some small wheels and sort of the thicker sidewalls, which just go well with the car. Like a car like this wouldn't look right with low profile tires, but as I said, we also have our Fiero badged wheels. I mean, that's so neat. Another thing that meant with the wheels is they're actually larger in the back than they are in the front. So they're 205 tires in the front, 215 tires in the back, which is pretty neat. We have our functioning air intake here. That's a real vent. It works. It's not just stick on. And GT on the side. I mean, that is one of the coolest badges I've seen on a car. Really neat. If you come around to the back, you can see sort of our mid-engine layout. Well, from the side, it looks kind of like a sloping back. There's actually a cut-off back right behind you, because this is where the engine sits, right here. You got your air intakes on either side and this wing here, which, I mean, probably doesn't do anything, but who cares? Look how cool it looks on here. Taking a look at the back, this is probably my favorite angle of the car. These exhausts are so cool. You have your quad exhaust in the back and this big old Pontiac here. The only other time it says Pontiac on the car. A really cool thing, when the lights are on, this Pontiac actually lights up red. So let's take a look under the hood here. Now, being a mid-engine car, you're probably expecting to see a frunk under here. But no, there is actually no storage up in the front. You get a spare tire and some of your fluids. You actually get a little jack you can put in here as well, but there isn't a frunk, which is too bad because I would love to say that I have a frunk, but I don't. We actually have our cooling and radiators up here as well, and that actually runs all the way back to the engine, which is pretty neat. But that's really all you have up here of note, and I also think it's really cool that it opens up backwards. I still wish that the C8 opened up that way to keep the Corvette thing kind of going, but I guess it's inconvenient. Who cares? Also, something very interesting that I found out about is that this has 2 heights you can put it at. I don't know why that happens. Maybe you want it to have shade while you're taking your tire out. I really have no idea, but it's there. Also, something of note, we actually have our sprayers here that spray water and cleaning up onto the windshield. They're actually hidden underneath the hood, so you don't get those ugly plastic pieces on top of your hood. They're actually hidden underneath here, which I thought was a cool touch. So you're probably wondering then, is there any storage? Do you have a trunk at all? And the answer is yes, we do. Right here in the back, right behind our 2.8 liter naturally aspirated engine. You can see, now from that angle, you're like, oh, that's a pretty garbage trunk. But if you come closer, you can see it actually goes like down to the floor. This is a really deep trunk. For having a trunk behind an engine and honestly a really small car, it's a good amount of storage you get in here. And also, it happens to be just like the Ford GT in the fact that you have a V6, it's mid-engine, and you have a trunk behind the engine. I mean, it's pretty much a Ford GT, that's all I'm saying. As you can see in front of the trunk, we've got our mighty little V6 engine. So originally this car from '84, which is the first year, had the Iron Duke 4-cylinder, which if you've watched our Trans Am video, Alan has the 301 in his Trans Am. That's pretty much half of that engine made into a little 4-cylinder. So this car originally with that engine made like 94 horsepower. It's not very good. And also that engine was the reason for the Pontiac Fiero's reputation for catching on fire. But thankfully we have the V6 in here, and so we don't have to worry about catching on fire, which I'm glad about. But this makes about 134 horsepower, which still doesn't sound like all that much, but take into account we also make 165 foot-pounds of torque, and this car weighs like less than 2,700 pounds. So this is like a little go-kart. You don't really need that much horsepower, and you'll see later as we drive, it's still such a ball to drive. But yeah, this is fuel injected, not carbureted. You can see our air intake is over to the side, right underneath this vent, which is your kind of filters air in there, which is pretty cool. You have your battery off to the other side. These come right out, and you can work on stuff there. We've got our transaxle right underneath it, and then power to the rear wheels via a 5-speed transmission. So cool. The alternative transmission you could get was a 3-speed automatic, and I mean, what's the point of having, you know, a lightweight sort of go-fast go-kart car with an automatic, especially a 3-speed? So super happy I could find both the V6 and the manual transmission combination. Really cool. But aside from that, I just think this engine looks great. They knew you're going to look at it every time you open the back to put something in your trunk. So it says Fiero on it, painted red. You even have red valve covers underneath it. So let's move on to the interior. So getting into the Fiero, one thing you may have noticed, and probably doesn't pick up all that well on camera, is this is a very low car. I mean, just watch me kind of fall into this car as it's... I mean, you're on the ground in this thing. It is seriously low, and it gives it a really sort of unique feel because you're like hunkered down, and SUVs next to you are like way out there. It's really cool. But in this interior, you can notice just how good shape this thing is. I didn't mention before, but this car has 42,000 original miles. This is a 34-year-old car with 42,000 original miles. I mean, I'm still just blown away at the... I can't believe I found this thing. But the interior shows. I mean, these seats look practically brand new. None of the plastic is faded. And the paint is all original. That looks incredible as well. There's only a few spots where there's some fading and a little bit of cracking, but everything else is just fantastic. But moving inside, you can see we have power windows, which is also in the middle, which I just think is so neat. Why is that so cool? I don't know, but it's super, super neat to have those power controls. You also have your power mirror controls here in the middle, and check out just the 80ness of this interior. I don't know why boxes on everything is so cool to me, but that's a signature 80s styling design, and it really shows in this interior, and you can date it by that. You don't have a traditional glove box in here. You can see it's kind of just a shelf you can put things in, but you do get a very cool stitched Fiero badge on here. You have your air vents off to the side. As far as storage goes in here, you do have this very nice sort of glove compartment center console thing where you can store stuff. In here we have the original owner's manual. I've read through some of this, some really cool stuff. But I mean, how cool is that? You have the original owner's manual with the car. We also have the original warranty and owner assist information for the first owner. I also forgot to mention this was a single owner car. I mean, so cool. So there's some really neat stuff in here, all the stuff that the factory warranty covered when the car was bought brand new. If you move on to sort of our center control stack here, you can see some of the really great stuff. Of course, all analog, which if you know anything about me is super cool. They're all buttons and dials here, which just makes it so much easier to use. You got your climate controls set here, super simple. You got this physical slider where you can go from cold to hot, works really well. This does come with air conditioning, which is great. You can, you know, your ventilation, your heater, your defroster, your fan speed, everything works great there. You got your radio controls down here. We do have a cassette player. I have yet to find a cassette to play in this, but when I do, I will play it in here. Auto reverse. What a luxury feature you get. But you got your radio controls as well. Everything works great. Your adjuster, you know, treble and bass, all the good stuff in here. And it works great. You know, we listened to the radio all the way home from when I drove it, and it was awesome. Something else really great is center gauges. There isn't a boost gauge because this is naturally aspirated. But boost gauges are always the coolest. We do have our battery gauge, our volt gauge, and our oil pressure gauge. Moving along to sort of our driver area, you can see you get sort of your own separate box here with everything on it. This is your trunk release, so you can pop the engine cover and put stuff in there. Strangely, if you press it this way, like on the trunk, it doesn't work. You got to press the top, and that'll pop the trunk open. Over here we have our headlight controls, which of course, super cool, pop up the headlights. This is your dimming control for how bright you want the lights on the inside to be. And that's pretty much all you get on that side. You can see the super cool steering wheel, no airbags, but it does look really cool. It's a neat steering wheel. And of course, on our door here, you can see the Fiero branded sort of pockets you get. You can pull those open and put stuff in there, which is really handy actually. So, let's see how it drives. Alright, so bulking up, you can see sort of an interesting seatbelt. The clip doesn't actually move on the seatbelt. You just move both parts of it and clip it on, which is interesting. But if we just move our power windows up, I love that those still work. That's so cool. You can see sort of a really cool sunroof here. You can pop it open at the back, let some air in, but it's nice and tinted so you don't get cooked in here. Something easy to forget is a rather interesting parking brake situation. So the parking brake is actually on the left side. You lift it up and it's on, and you can push it back down so you can get off, but the parking brake is still on. So to turn it off, you lift it up, you hit the button, and then you push it back down. So it's very difficult to tell if it's on or not, but it is kind of a really neat thing because I think that's how like European supercars of the time did it. So kind of something neat. You can see we have just these great pockets here. I mean, I hate driving with things in my pockets, and just having those there, they're totally out of the way and really cool. As we pull away, we have no power steering in this thing. It's, you know, it's a really light car, and you get some really great feedback from the steering because it's, you know, no power assisted. You don't need it. It's a little go-kart. So, like I said earlier, you sit low in this thing. This is a low car. I mean, you get the low center of gravity, you get the engine right behind you. It's really cool. So we just pull out. But you know, steering is fine once you're moving, as with any car without power steering. But it's just such a cool experience to drive this car. You're sitting down real low, you got this shifter up real high, just how it is. You got the engine sound right behind you. It's so cool. So for a little V6, I think it sounds really good. In my opinion, this is one of the, you know, it's no V8, but it sounds great for a little V6, and it runs so well. You got your sort of gauge cluster here, which is really great. Interesting thing with the tachometer, 0 is like all the way over here on the circle, and it loops like all the way around to about 6,000, which is the red line. The thing with that is, when you're looking at it from where I am, this column blocks the tachometer from below. So when you're low, you're beneath 3,000 RPM, you like have no idea what RPM you're at. But as you get to drive it more, you don't really use the tachometer anymore. It's kind of just listening to the engine. But just take a listen to this V6. It's such a cool sound, and it sounds so analog. I don't know what it is about it, but I'm sure there's very little sound insulation between you and the engine, and you hear all the little like clicks and ticks of it running and everything. It's really cool. And again, such a different experience of hearing the engine right behind your head. I love it. Oh man. Talking about performance with this car. Again, you hear the number 135 horsepower from a little V6, and you think that's not very much, is it? But remember, 165 foot-pounds of torque in a car that weighs like 2,700 pounds. It's a little go-kart. It really is. And the throttle response is fantastic on this thing. Like, we're in 4th gear right now, and it's just, as soon as I touch the throttle, you start hearing the revs. There's no delay at all, which is really great. And it makes you feel just that connected. And same thing with the shifter. It's very, very mechanical. You have the linkage go all the way back to the transaxle, and so you get the real good like snicks in and out of gear, and it's so much fun to drive. Yeah. I mean, the Fiero gets bashed sometimes as sort of a failed effort by Pontiac. I think that's mainly due to the earlier models. They had such a low budget that they couldn't really make the car what they wanted it to be. But by 87, or really kind of halfway through 86 into 87, you got the GT, where you get the V6, and you get what I think is a better looking body style on the car. But it all works together so well. You get such a, like, I keep bringing up the word analog, but it describes this so well. You get the feeling of it. Now sure, you're not going that fast. I wouldn't call this car very quick, but it's fun and it feels like you're going fast. You're hunkered down real low, you got this non-power steering, you get the great throttle feel, and the clutch and the shifter is just like sticks into gear, and you hear everything going on behind you with the engine. It's just so cool. I love it. It's such a great just car to drive, and something so different from modern cars. With this car, we come with all independent suspension front and rear, so you get actually a really good ride. And again, I can't believe that this car only has 42,000 miles, and it shows. It really shows that this is like barely broke in. Oh, it's great. I do really love the sunroof we get. It helps to open up sort of the cabin a little bit, because the roofline is pretty close to me. But there's plenty of room in here. You can move the seat back even further than I have it. For a small car, which this very much is, and a very low car, you actually have a really spacious cabin. You got a big windshield, you got great view out the back, aside from maybe the spoiler blocking some of it. But I'm not cramped at all, and with 2 people in here, totally fine. But there's something else to it. It's just the right amount of speed for this car. Like, this car very well could have been overpowered with a heavy engine that would throw off the balance and, ruin sort of the sort of darty feel that this car has. You can, shoot it in and out of stuff, and you can floor it and not go to jail. Like, I can floor it, take it all the way up to 5th gear, and I'm only going like 60 miles an hour, But you feel like you're going fast, and it's like, pushing it for all it's got. And there's something to that. I really, really enjoy it. So this car actually, I think, is supposed to come with a shift light. In my box made up of more boxes I have in the middle here, well, this one, top right, is supposed to be a shift light. Not working right now, which, doesn't bother me. I'm not sure if it's a fuel economy shift light, which it probably is, where it tells you should be shifting right now. Or if it's like a real shift light where you get to red line, it tells you should be shifting. But I'm pretty sure it's the more annoying of the two. But first and foremost, this is a handling car. Let's see how she does. nothing. I could have gone way faster around that. It handles it so well. The balance and everything, it's so good. I love the engine note. I really do. It's so fitting of this car. And it's such a joy to throw around corners. Like, again, if this had like 100, 200 more horsepower, I'd be terrified of doing that. But with this 135 horsepower, it's like you can give it all the gas you want and kind of, you know, you can push it and not be scared. And I love that so much. It's confidence inspiring. That's what I want to say. Speaking of the engine, as I mentioned, it's got a higher torque figure than horsepower figure, which I guess is pretty common of American cars from the late 80s. But something that comes with that, it doesn't really work like you would think in sort of a exotic, almost, you know, exotic mid-engine car, where normally you have, you know, high revving, high horsepower. But this doesn't really have that. You actually get some good torque at low RPM. So you don't have to rev it all the way out to get all of your horsepower. It's actually pretty good at low RPM. Like right now we're at, let me move the steering wheel so I can see. We're at 2,000 RPM, and you get a pretty good push when you give it some gas. It's really cool, and I like it a lot. It's pretty linear as you rev it up. For everyone who has, you know, who knows me or has watched my channel for a while, you know that I am so into different cars, mid-engine cars particularly. And this car has always been a really big interest to me, especially, as I said, this kind of car, specifically this kind of Fiero. The V6, which is the good engine, the 5-speed manual, which I do not want the 3-speed automatic. I couldn't do a sports car with 3-speed auto. I just couldn't. The fantastic styling. In my opinion, this is one of the best looking cars from the 80s. But it combines all of these things, the mid-engine layout, you get a great sound. It's just such an analog feeling car and so engaging to drive. I mean, it really is a sports car. Even though people think it's underpowered, I don't think it's underpowered. I think it's powered just right with this little V6. And again, to find one in this good condition with this few miles on it it's truly incredible. I mean, I'm glad I went and got it when I did. It was 2 hours away from us. We drove it all the way up. Well, we drove all the way up to New York. We bought it, and then I drove this all the way back down for 2 hours on the highway, going 70, 75, and it was fine. No problems. I plan on keeping this car for a long, long time. I want to maintain it, keep it all original as it is, and just enjoy it. Alright everyone, that wraps up my first video on the Fiero. You can expect much more Fiero content coming your way, and just I'm glad to share with you guys buying my dream car. I mean, every car you see is front engine, and every car you see, most cars you see at the car show are front engine V8. But this is something else, this is something different, and something really, really special to me. So I'm so happy to finally own one of these for myself. So that wraps up today's video, everyone. Make sure to subscribe to see more Fiero content coming soon, and I will see you later. Pontiac Fiero. Best car ever. It's not, but I want one. It'll be on the channel. Well, once my channel grows and I have millions of subscribers, I'm buying a Fiero. Okay?
Monetizations, watch those ads, please.
I could have money. I could have all the money. I'd buy a Fiero. You can't stop me. It's a good car.
I'm just waiting for Alan to just go.
Pontiac Squad.